I refused to babysit my stepsister's kids. My dad threatened to cut me off, leading to uncovered family secrets and strained ties. Imagine you're about to leave for a long-awaited night out with your best friends. It's been a grueling week, and all you want is to unwind, laugh, and celebrate a friend's well-deserved promotion. Then, just as you're heading for the door, there's an unexpected knock, and your evening is about to take a completely different turn. This was Sophia's life. What began as a simple refusal to babysit turned into a labyrinth of family secrets, betrayals, and unexpected bonds that would change her life forever. Sophia, a 28-year-old graphic designer, had lived through the upheaval of her parents' divorce when she was just a child. After her mother moved away, Sophia was left with her father, and together they formed a close bond, or at least, that's what Sophia thought. Everything shifted when Linda, a lively and spirited woman, entered her father's life, along with her daughter, Emma. Emma was 3 years younger than Sophia, and while many might have expected them to become instant friends, the reality was far more complicated. Sophia was introverted and reserved, while Emma was energetic and extroverted. Their personalities clashed like fire and ice. When Sophia turned 18, she moved out to attend college. It was an opportunity to finally get the space she craved from the forced new family dynamic. She focused on her studies, built friendships of her own, and forged her career path as a designer. Though she visited her father during the holidays, her interactions with Linda and Emma remained minimal, mostly polite small talk over holiday dinners or occasional birthday messages. Life was good for Sophia. It was predictable. It was her own, and she liked it that way. That all changed when Emma and her husband, Jake, moved to Sophia's city. Jake had landed a new job, and they came with their 2 young children in tow. Sophia's father reached out, asking her to help Emma settle in. Reluctantly, Sophia agreed, hoping it would just be a one-time thing, a gesture to maintain peace in the family. But, instead of ending there, Sophia found Emma showing up at her apartment more frequently, with her children in tow. At first, it seemed innocent. Emma was just running an errand and needed someone to watch the kids for an hour. Sophia agreed a few times, partly because she didn't want to seem unfriendly, but also because she hoped Emma would soon find her footing in the new city. But that wasn't what happened. The visits became daily occurrences, and Sophia's life began to revolve around Emma's unexpected babysitting demands. One day, after Emma once again showed up unannounced, Sophia had had enough. She had been looking forward to celebrating her friend's promotion for days. She even told Emma earlier that day that she wouldn't be available. Assuming Emma understood, but there she was at the door, with her kids in tow, handing them over before Sophia even had time to protest. Furious, Sophia stayed home, babysitting while Emma left. That evening, when Emma returned, they had an argument. Sophia demanded respect for her time and space, and told Emma she would no longer babysit, emphasizing that they were not really family, just 2 people whose parents happened to get married. Emma left in tears, and though Sophia felt bad, she was also relieved to have finally stood her ground. The next day, Sophia's father called. He was furious. He told Sophia that Emma was crying and upset, and he demanded that Sophia apologize and continue to babysit for Emma. He insisted that this is what family does. When Sophia tried to explain her side, how she felt her time was being disrespected, how Emma had ruined her plans, her father dismissed her concerns. He called her selfish, accusing her of holding onto old resentment from when he married Linda, and threatened to cut her off financially if she didn't fall in line. But Sophia wasn't a teenager anymore. She didn't need her father's money. She was self-sufficient. She ended the call by telling her father that if this was enough to cut ties, then maybe they weren't as close as she thought. With her father not speaking to her, and family members taking sides, Sophia found herself increasingly isolated. It wasn't long after that she noticed something odd. One day, while working at a coffee shop, she spotted Jake, Emma's husband, sitting at a table with a woman. Sophia initially thought it was a work meeting, but when she saw Jake holding the woman's hand and the intensity of their conversation, she realized this was no business deal. Shocked, Sophia left without confronting Jake, unsure of what to do next. Should she tell Emma, knowing it would devastate her? Or should she stay out of it, considering their already tense relationship? Not long after that, Emma called, sobbing. Sophia assumed Emma had found out about Jake, But to her surprise, it wasn't about that at all. Emma confessed that she had been seeing a therapist for postpartum depression and anxiety, something she had kept hidden from everyone in the family. She had lied about running errands. She was actually going to therapy sessions and was too ashamed to tell anyone, fearing they would judge her as a bad mother. Sophia's anger started to fade as she listened to Emma pour her heart out. And she felt sympathy for her stepsister in a way she hadn't before. They talked for hours, and Sophia began to see Emma in a new light, as a person with struggles of her own, who was trying her best, but had made mistakes. This newfound understanding led Sophia to decide that she needed to be honest. She gently told Emma about seeing Jake with another woman. Emma, however, was not surprised. She explained that she already knew. The woman was Jake's half-sister. He had recently found his biological family and was trying to get to know them, which was why he hadn't told Emma until he felt ready. Sophia was relieved to learn Jake wasn't having an affair, but the secrecy was still troubling. Everything seemed like it was on the mend, until another secret came to light that shook Sophia to her core. One evening, her father showed up at her apartment looking unusually anxious. He confessed that the woman Jake was meeting was not just Jake's half-sister, but Sophia's half-sister too. Many years ago, before Linda entered his life, her father had a brief relationship with Jake's biological mother, resulting in a daughter. The shock of the revelation left Sophia reeling. Her father had been keeping this secret for nearly 3 decades. As if things couldn't get worse, Emma called Sophia a few weeks later. Devastated, she had followed Jake one day, and instead of meeting his half-sister at a coffee shop, he met her at a hotel. Emma confronted him, and he admitted to having an affair with his own half-sister. He claimed they had formed a connection, one that had confused him and eventually led to an inappropriate relationship. Emma was heartbroken. She decided to leave Jake and asked if she and the kids could stay with Sophia for a while. Despite everything, Sophia couldn't say no. Emma and her children moved in, and Sophia's apartment transformed into a chaotic refuge. It wasn't easy. Emma was emotionally shattered. Her children were confused, and Jake kept showing up, demanding to see his family. Things became so volatile that Sophia had to threaten to call the police to keep Jake away. In the midst of this chaos, Sophia's father contacted her again. He wanted to explain himself, but Sophia wasn't ready to hear it. She was too angry at him for the secrets, at Jake for his betrayal, and at herself for not having seen any of this coming. She realized that her family, which she thought she knew so well, was built on secrets and lies. It was like her whole world had shattered, and she didn't know where to begin to piece it back together. Over the next few weeks, Sophia took some time off work to process everything. She reached out to her mother, who had moved away when she was young. Though they hadn't spoken much over the years, her mother became an unexpected source of comfort. They had honest conversations about the past, and slowly began rebuilding their relationship. In the midst of all the chaos, Sophia found solace in reconnecting with the person she had lost touch with the most. Eventually, Emma found her own apartment and started working part-time at a local bookstore. She was determined to rebuild her life for her children's sake, and Sophia admired her strength. They stayed close, and while Sophia helped out with the kids from time to time, it was always on her terms. They had both learned the value of boundaries, respect, and honesty, lessons that had come at a great cost. Sophia decided to take a sabbatical and travel. She needed distance from the family drama, and time to rediscover herself. While sitting in a small cafe in Europe, she realized that, for the first time in a long time, she felt free. Family was important, but it wasn't everything. She had learned that people who truly care for you will respect your boundaries and will never demand you sacrifice your own well-being for their comfort. Her relationship with her father remained strained, but they were slowly trying to mend it. They talked about the past, the secrets he kept, and the impact it had on everyone. He had started seeing a therapist to work through his own guilt and shame. And for the first time, Sophia felt like maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. Jake, meanwhile, had left the city. His relationship with his half-sister ended in disaster, and he was trying to make amends with his adoptive family. Emma had filed for divorce and was focusing on her children and her new life. Despite everything, she was finding her strength, and it made Sophia proud. Sophia concluded that life is unpredictable, and family relationships are rarely straightforward. Sometimes, those closest to you can hurt you the most. But it is how you choose to respond that defines you. She chose honesty, courage, and self-respect, even when it was the hardest thing to do. She learned that establishing boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for your well-being. Most importantly, she learned that it is never too late to redefine what family means to you and to surround yourself with people who lift you up rather than weigh you down. This journey was filled with pain, betrayal, and unexpected connections, but it was also a story of resilience, growth, and rediscovery. It serves as a reminder that, in the face of adversity, you have the power to choose your path, to redefine your life and your relationships in a way that brings you peace, strength, and fulfillment. Am I the jerk for kicking out my sister's boyfriend after he rejected the dinner I spent hours cooking? Imagine spending hours in the kitchen, pouring love and effort into crafting a special dinner for your loved ones, only for one guest to pull out their own meal in front of everyone, completely disregarding what you made. Sounds shocking, right? That's how this story begins, a story about family, boundaries, and how one dinner revealed much more than dietary preferences. The evening started with excitement. The original poster, Op, a 28-year-old woman, invited her sister and her sister's boyfriend, Steve, over for a cozy dinner. Op loved cooking, and she had meticulously prepared a luxurious spread, homemade pasta, a slow-cooked sauce, a fresh salad, and even a decadent tiramisu for dessert. She was eager to share her passion for cooking with her family, especially since this kind of meal was meant to show her affection. When her sister, who was 25, and Steve, who was 26, arrived, everything seemed to be going well. The three of them sat down, ready to enjoy the meal. But Steve's expression changed as Op served the pasta. He looked at it with a blank stare and then bluntly announced, "I don't eat carbs." At first, Op thought it might be a joke. Who could refuse such a delicious plate of food? But Steve wasn't joking. He explained he was on a strict keto diet and that carbs were his enemy. Feeling taken aback but still wanting to be accommodating, Op offered to make Steve something else, like a big salad or a different dish using ingredients she had on hand. But instead of accepting this gesture, Steve rejected the offer. He then reached into his bag, pulled out a Tupperware container, and began eating boiled chicken and broccoli right at the table while everyone else had the meal Op had so lovingly prepared. At this point, Op felt stunned and, quite frankly, insulted. She had spent hours preparing this elaborate dinner, only to watch Steve refuse it outright. Without any forewarning or discussion, she decided to speak up, telling Steve that it was rude to bring his own food without informing her beforehand. She wanted to have an open and welcoming evening, and what Steve did felt more like a statement of defiance than a dietary necessity. Steve, however, got defensive. He argued that Op was being controlling by not respecting his dietary choices. And he doubled down, suggesting that she should have known he was following keto. The argument escalated to the point where Op had had enough, and she told Steve that if he couldn't respect her cooking or let her make something suitable, maybe he should leave. Steve took her up on it, grabbing his Tupperware and storming out of the house, muttering something about just trying to be healthy. OP's sister, caught in the middle, tried to diffuse the tension, but she was clearly torn. She ultimately chose to leave as well, and the evening ended on a sour note. Op was left wondering if she had overreacted. She had genuinely tried to accommodate Steve when she realized he couldn't eat the pasta. Was she wrong to be upset about Steve bringing his own meal? While she reached out to friends for support, her sister expressed that she felt embarrassed, and OP's mom believed she should apologize to Steve. On the other hand, many of her friends believed that Steve had been incredibly rude by not communicating his dietary needs ahead of time and then pulling out his own meal in such an overtly dismissive way. 6 days later, just as Op thought things were cooling down, her sister contacted her again, this time inviting her to what seemed to be a family dinner to discuss the incident. Op went, thinking it would just be her sister, Steve, and herself having a conversation to sort out their issues. Instead, when she arrived at her parents' house, she found her mom, dad, her brother, and Steve's parents, a full-blown intervention. The dinner was far from casual. Steve's mother, Carol, was already in full attack mode, insisting that Steve had always had special dietary needs, and that people who care about him should automatically respect his boundaries. Carol made it sound like Steve's dietary preferences were akin to life-threatening allergies, even though it was just a keto diet he had chosen to follow. OP's mom was visibly uncomfortable, while her dad stayed quiet, sipping on his beer, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. Carol then did something that was almost unbelievable. She pulled out a folder. Yes, a literal folder filled with printouts. It contained Steve's dietary guidelines, meal plans, and even lists of keto-friendly restaurants. Carol handed the folders out to Op, her parents, and Steve's parents, treating the whole scenario like an educational seminar on how to cater to Steve's needs. Op couldn't help but find the situation absurd, but she tried to keep her composure. Then Steve, emboldened by his mother's support, proposed a solution. He said he was willing to forgive Op for disrespecting his lifestyle if she agreed to redo the dinner. This time strictly following keto-friendly guidelines. He even showed her some keto recipes on his phone, suggesting that this could be a way for her to make amends. Op couldn't believe what she was hearing. Despite the ridiculousness, her sister remained silent throughout, staring down at her plate. Clearly overwhelmed, Op had finally reached her breaking point. She stood up and said, "I'm not redoing the dinner. If Steve can't eat what I cook or let me make something he can eat, that's fine, but showing up with his own meal and expecting me to cater to him without warning is disrespectful. And I'm not apologizing for feeling that way." That was when Steve's father stood up and pointed at Op, declaring that, "This is why Steve doesn't trust women. They always make it about themselves." The whole room fell into stunned silence. Finally, OP's dad spoke up. He had had enough of the circus, and calmly said, "I think it's time for you all to leave." He walked toward the door, clearly signaling that Steve's family was no longer welcome. Steve and his parents left, fuming, while OP's sister remained, looking torn between her loyalty to her boyfriend and her family. Steve, in his rage, accused Op of trying to sabotage his relationship with her sister, insisting that Op was jealous of what they had. Op decided not to entertain his outburst any longer and walked out of the mess. Over the next few days, however, Op received a call from her sister, a surprising one. She revealed that she had broken up with Steve and needed some time to stay with Op to sort things out. It turned out that the dinner incident had opened her sister's eyes to a lot of Steve's controlling behavior. Steve had been insistent on her following his keto diet for months, and she had even been hiding snacks in her car just to get a break from his constant pressure. She had never realized how controlling Steve was until everyone saw it play out in real time during that ill-fated intervention. Steve, predictably, went silent after the breakup, but Op continued to receive passive-aggressive messages from Carol, who seemed to believe her son was simply misunderstood. OP's sister, on the other hand, was starting to see just how oppressive and manipulative Steve had been. Op welcomed her sister to stay with her, glad to see her finally gaining some independence and clarity. This story is more than just about an awkward dinner, it's about boundaries, respect, and how control can manifest in subtle but ultimately damaging ways. Steve's refusal to eat the dinner Op cooked was not merely about dietary preferences, it was about exerting control. His expectation that Op should have known about his diet, his refusal to let her prepare something different, and even his bringing his own food were all acts that showcased his unwillingness to compromise or communicate. The intervention further highlighted just how deep these controlling tendencies ran, with his mother backing him up to an absurd extent. This wasn't just about Steve wanting to follow a diet, it was about him wanting everyone else to cater to his needs and belittling anyone who didn't. OP's sister's realization that she had been bending over backward to appease Steve, even hiding her own eating habits to avoid his judgment, is a key turning point. It reveals how these controlling behaviors can wear someone down over time until they start hiding parts of themselves to keep the peace. The story is a reminder that relationships require mutual respect, communication, and boundaries. Op had offered to make something that fit Steve's diet, a reasonable compromise, but Steve refused. And instead of communicating his needs beforehand, he chose to impose them in a way that made everyone uncomfortable. Relationships, whether familial or romantic, thrive on openness and understanding, not on control or coercion. To illustrate further, let's look at a couple of hypothetical scenarios involving healthy boundaries. Imagine a friend who is vegan is invited to dinner. instead of showing up with their own meal and surprising the host. They communicate in advance about their dietary restrictions. The host might even find joy in preparing a vegan-friendly dish, learning something new in the process. This simple communication prevents awkwardness and makes everyone feel comfortable. Another example might be a couple with different dietary needs. Perhaps one partner has gluten intolerance while the other loves bread. Instead of forcing one lifestyle on the other, they agree on a middle ground. They share gluten-free meals when eating together but respect each other's choices when eating separately. This balance shows respect for each person's autonomy and well-being. In OP's story, the unhealthy dynamics of Steve's control became visible to everyone because of his inability to compromise and communicate. OP's sister ultimately decided she deserved better than someone who made her feel as though she had to hide parts of herself to maintain peace. It's a lesson in asserting one's own boundaries and recognizing when someone else's boundaries are actually unreasonable demands cloaked as preferences. The key takeaway? Respect and compromise are cornerstones of healthy relationships. Communication is crucial, and anyone who demands that others cater to their every need without discussion is less interested in mutual respect and more in control. OP's story is a reminder that sometimes the dinner table is where all true colors are revealed.